Okay, starting off on quite a heavy note. As a Buddhist, how should we see suicide? The suicide cases involving young teens in my country seem to increase in recent years, and they're getting younger. What is Ajahn view and advice on this? Well, first of all, it's considered extremely foolish way of dealing with suffering and has severe karmic consequences. Often the commentaries and texts are quoted to the tune that means like 10,000 lives afterwards you'll commit suicide, and I'm not sure that I would accept that as literally true. And as with anything else, there are very different reasons, motivations for committing suicide, some which make more sense than others. Where suicide involves really heavy karma, as I think, when it's done out of spite or out of anger against, say, parents, or to make someone else feel guilty or sad or whatever. So in that kind of case, then there is really a lot of karma involved, and perhaps some of you know parents of suicides and how it tears them apart and often leads to the end of their marriage. And so it inflicts, it's a very selfish thing to do, you can say, in that it inflicts incredible lasting pain on the people that you should love the most and care for the most. So I see that kind of sort of immature, selfish, spiteful kind of gesture as being far more karmically dark and having far heavier consequences than someone who's faced with overwhelming pain and feeling despair and seeing suicide as a way of just shortening a period of meaningless pain. So, of course, for those who are in support of euthanasia, then those are the sort of the cases that they will quote. But I'm definitely not in favor of euthanasia, and in fact, if a monk was to suggest euthanasia and someone was to take his advice, then that monk would be considered to have broken the third parajika and to be have been involved in the killing of someone, and would have to leave the monkhood. In the explosion of adolescent, the word explosion, very rapid increase. People like Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, has done a lot of research on this, and he's one of the people who pointed out the very close correlation between dramatic increases in teenage suicide, particularly amongst girls, and also depression, anxiety, self-harming, with the appearance of social media platforms like Facebook. So Facebook 2012, and that was when all these statistics started to shoot up. So social media definitely plays a role to one degree or another. And of course, this is one of the arguments leading to Australia and other governments now starting to ban social media for under 16s. From a more, as they say, Buddhist perspective, let's say, I think that the secularization of societies and the rejection of the teachings of rebirth and the belief in materialistic dogmas, I would say dogmas, also plays a part. That if you believe that death is just turning off a switch, I've had enough of this, and just turn my life off, and that'll be the end of it, everything. So I would think that would increase the likelihood of suicide quite considerably. And this, I would call it a superstitious view that physical death is the end of everything. It's now become like the default, and and teaching of rebirth is considered to be kind of like unscientific, and I don't think that argument really stands up so well. And so I've been talking about this a lot recently, but I shall repeat myself and think that one of the topics to suggest people with very strong materialistic beliefs investigate what we call NDE, near-death experiences. And one of the most famous is of an American woman in her 30s, a singer, a musician, who had, I think, like a large tumor on her brain, and this is 30 years ago. They came up with a new technique whereby they drained all the blood from her brain, stopped her heart beating, so she was technically dead, before removing the tumor. And then once the operation was over, then they injected the blood back into the brain and started the heart. So the point being that during the procedure, she was technically speaking dead. And there were like ECG. Why this particular case is well known is because there were the machines that were measuring brain and heart activity that were which we have records of. So the ECG said there was zero brain activity. She also had coverings over her eyes, so she couldn't see anything, and then these earphones, which had this very loud clicking, click, 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 a little bit, I would assume like in an MRI facility, and apparently this measures brain stem activity. So this woman, she was operated on, no heartbeat, no brain stem activity, no brainwave activity. Her eyes are covered, her ears are covered, and she after the operation, she said she was conscious the whole time. She floated up to the ceiling and she watched the whole procedure. And what's interesting is that she could recall conversation between doctor and nurse, and even some music which was playing in the background. So I would say you don't need to have many examples. I mean, just one example of someone who, by all scientific standards, as I understand it, zero heart activity, zero brain activity, and yet was totally conscious and was verifiably so, I think, from the fact that she could remember conversations and things that occurred while her brain was not working. So if the mind is an epiphenomena, it's merely dependent upon the brain, then how could that be possible? And materialists get themselves into real knots trying to find some way of explaining this. I'm personally, I don't find their explanations at all convincing. And I would say this at least is food for thought, at the very least, for someone who believes that physical death is the end of everything. And of course, there are so many other phenomena. Most interestingly, the memories of children throughout the world, remembering past lives, which a department in University of Virginia has done some very rigorous research. And these are not Buddhists or Hindus with an axe to grind. These are secular scientists and very, very careful about any statements and any evidence before they acknowledge it. One example that comes to mind of a child in central Turkey who remembered being a businessman or a government official in Istanbul and explained his life as a businessman in the way that a child would. It doesn't fully understand. It was carrying a case around and lived in this big house and described it on the waterfront and so on and so forth. So the researchers went to Istanbul and found there was no such road, no such building, and they were unable to verify this child's memories. And then one of the researchers went to the library and went through some old documents and found out that 50 or 100 years before there was indeed such a building, such a road, and that it had been demolished and built over. And even though nobody who lived in that neighborhood could remember that. So the question is, how could a child born in a small house in the central Turkey, who'd never been outside Ankara in his life, be able to concoct something like that? When even if you say, well, he's watched YouTube or he saw, I mean, they were only able to verify it by spending hours in a library and finding these old documents to prove that such a house, such a company existed in the past. So there's just two of so many huge number of evidence supportive of the idea of rebirth. So as a Buddhist monk, I know this is, one of the things that I would like to emphasize, the extent to which this kind of default belief, which is almost the level of a dogma, that the mind is simply an epiphenomena of the brain, and when the brain dies, then the mind dies, and if you're suffering a lot, then and you die, then that's the end of everything. I would say it's on very shaky ground, and that it's good for people to be introduced to these kinds of areas of research in terms of past life memory research and near-death experience research before being so sure. Otherwise, this is just one question. We could probably spend an hour on this. Looking at schools and colleges needing more counselors, mental health counsel, needing the children and students to have more care, and from both in their family and the school, and when educators noticing that some children, some students are starting to exhibit some telltale signs, there should be people that they can refer the children to and have a lot more mental health support for young people than I think is available at the moment. Okay, so yes, I would agree. In Chinese culture, 10 months in mother's womb is due to the calculation of 1 month during conception. 1 + 9 is 10. Yeah, that's probably accurate also. For Buddhist monk, you have to be 20 years old to become a monk, but that's calculated from conception, not from birth, in the traditional in the Vinaya. In terms of prioritization of the key Buddhist values that are considered necessary and important to the young people, for example, high school students in this era of social media and AI, what are the first 3 values? I don't know whether I can select 3 values, probably 10 values more likely. Generosity, sila, and bhavana. It's not really not a question to really approach in terms of 3. I often get asked, what is the one thing? It's like this one value. But the whole point of Buddha Dhamma, the key feature is that it's a system. It's an organic system in which you can't just take out 1 or 2 or 3 virtues or practices. The moment you take it out of its context in the Eightfold Path, it loses its integrity and its power. It has to be the whole thing. After volunteering in a Buddhist community for some years, I noticed that the more I contribute, the more duties and tasks I am given. Yes, I think everyone knows that one. To the point that many negative thoughts and emotions start to arise in the mind, including a lot of anger. I have tried to convince myself that those tasks are good learning opportunities and I should practice more compassion, but the anger and dissatisfaction do not get less. I've also given up trying to negotiate or explain my limitations because I know at the end of the day I still have to complete whatever task given to me, no matter how difficult it is. May I seek Ajahn advice on how can I manage my negative thoughts and emotions in this situation. Thank you. yeah, I don't think this is just in Buddhist communities. It's like everywhere, isn't it? And 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Is the general principle. And again, I think in families and in Buddhist communities, people who are very dutiful and willing to sacrifice themselves for others will quite often think, I'll just be a good example, and then people will get the point and follow me. But they don't. They just think, that's just what you like to do. That's who you are. You do stuff like that, and the better you are, then the worse it is, because maybe some people who do think that they would help, then they think, yeah, but she can do it so much better than me. So let her do it, or let him do it. The Buddha's teaching, as I said, is organic whole, and it's a holistic system. And it's a Dhamma Vinaya, and so there has to be that complete, at least the effort to integrate those two sides of things. And Vinaya here means how we create the environment that we live in. So all those areas in which we have some control or some power, and how do we create the environment which is most conducive to the development and growth in Dhamma of all present. So that's the guiding idea of Vinaya. So this can be enshrined in a constitution, in laws, in regulations, in customs, in protocols, in agreements. These are all the various ways in which you create a Vinaya. So the Vinaya, sort of par excellence, if you like, is the monks, the bhikkhu or bhikkhuni Vinaya, because it was designed by a fully enlightened Buddha and for people who have signed up for it. So people who volunteer and make a commitment to it. And so the Buddha cannot introduce or advocate the same kind of Vinaya in society at large, because it can't be imposed upon people, because it's a training, and can't use a kind of reward and punishment kind of system to create Vinaya. So the Buddha would teach kings and leaders, and what are the qualities of a good leader, what are the duties and responsibilities of a good leader, and what are the duties of responsibilities of a government, but speaking in more general terms about principles. And then it was up to the rulers and the leaders to adapt those principles to the countries in which they lived, to the extent to which they were able. So in small communities, whether it's a Buddhist community or something, then we're not just Dhamma practitioners come together. We are Dhamma Vinaya practitioners. And this should be a constant reflection, to what extent is the way that we are working together, that we are practicing together, in harmony with the principles of Vinaya, meaning structures and relationships and responsibilities that are most conducive to growth in Dhamma. And what are the obstacles, and what are the things that prevent that happening, and what can we do about them? And so I think everyone would probably agree that poor communication skills are a major issue in every community. And in Buddhist communities in particular, there's this idea that you should just let go and you should not make a fuss, and it's a teaching, and everything's a teacher, and it's because you're not mindful that you're suffering, and all those things. There's truth to them, but it's not the whole truth. And if you get into that way of thinking of I should be more giving, I should be more patient, I should be, then that in itself is a danger signal. This sort of who you should be and who you shouldn't be. That's already means you've lost the plot, as it were. So what I think is helpful is to have meetings where come together. We do this in Banyapatip school, and we're actually even doing it at Wat Nanachat when I was there once or twice a month, where you put the hierarchy to one side and you have a circle meeting where people are able to express their frustrations in a controlled way, in which not just venting or ranting or giving Dhamma talks, but telling people how things are going right now. And everyone has opportunity to say, I love being here. It's been one of the most important things in my life for so many years, and I'm totally committed, but I just feel my feeling is I'm being taken advantage of, that I'm being given too much work, that it's just too much for me. I can do it. I mean, in the sense that the work's completed on time, but it's just having a real toll on myself and my own practice, and I'm wondering if you can help me with this. I'm struggling with this. I'm not sure how sustainable this is. And the feelings of resentment and anger and so on, these are completely normal and natural if you're holding all that down and you're well, I should be looking at this as a teaching. I should be able to let this go. I should be more mindful, and that's not the wise way of looking at it. There's a problem. There's a problem of allocation of resources. There's a problem of working together in a way which is fair and helpful for everyone. And bringing it up is not an admission of selfishness or kind of weak, poor practice, but it's a duty that you have to the community. So if it is a Buddhist community, then everybody is, I presume, is very well intentioned, but you just get into habits in any kind of community, and you take people for granted. And I know many of you are leaders, and how we contribute to this kind of condition is you've got like so many different things on your plate, and how am I going to get this done and that done, and then oh, this monk is like super competent. If I ask him to do it, boop, 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 it'll be done. That's like Ajahn Jayasaro. He's like this. He's super competent. He's my external hard drive. He remembers everything I can't remember anymore. But but when you have monks like this in your monastery, it's just normal, and things need to be done today, and then so and so could do it, but then I have to come over and explain to things, and then he's got all these doubts, or he's got some, oh dear, I just don't have time for that. Ajahn Dod, can you sleep? Yeah, so can you relate to that? In leadership positions where you just naturally, given the pressures that you're under, you're looking to the most efficient and and competent people, and so that you need to have that kind of feedback. Excuse me. And Ajahn, Ajahn Dun's not going to say anything, but he's out on his feet. He's a complete wreck, and sort of, oh my God, I never realized, and so it's a matter of giving each other the benefit of the doubt, and we're all, Buddhist communities, everyone is well intentioned, but we've all got defilements, and we've all got blind spots, and we've all got, there are all kinds of reasons why some people end up doing far more than they can manage on a sustainable basis, and trying to train people and delegate authority to people who are not so competent, maybe, but for the long-term welfare of communities, efficiency is not always the number one priority. So the questioner, it's a long rambling answer, but I would say you need to sit down with the other people and just tell them, I just can't do this. I want to be here, I want to help, but it's beyond what I can manage right now. And if you feel embarrassed about this, say, Ajahn Jayasaro says I'm doing too much. Okay. If during sitting I am not aware of movements around me, am I fully in the present moment? Conversely, if I am aware of movements but that did not bother me, am I practicing correctly? Okay. As you practice meditation, then the mind will become more and more focused, more and more sensitive, and more separate from the world around. And the extent to which there is impingement from the external world, one is dependent on the strength of the samadhi, but also there is some, I would say, like, I want to say personality, or just things that are not a matter of defilement. There's a point in Ajahn, in Lumpur Cha's biography, Stillness Flowing, some people may remember, where he was sitting meditation, and there was some dance, fair, music, and so on in a local village. And he said he practiced to the extent that if he wanted to hear it, he could. If he didn't want to, he didn't. And so that there's that kind of membrane, that connection is lost. So for some meditators, that might mean that there's no perception of sound, that the mind is. But for other meditators, it may be that it's there, out there, but the mind is completely uninterested in it. And in either case, you could say that you're in the present moment. So sitting here, there are kind of peripheral sounds. It might be a car or a bird or an insect or something, but it doesn't prevent you from listening to me speaking. It's just something there in the background. But if you were to say, what kind of bird is that? Oh, why did it stop? And then you sort of start to think about it. Oh, is it one of those? And if I had my telephone, I'd look up and find out what kind of. Oh, that's a peacock. Yes. So if your mind's getting cut, that's obviously, you've lost it. But if it's just sound arising and passing away without any sense of connection and interest, and then it's being in the present moment. So, dear Venerable Ajahn, AI can do many things now. Do you think it can do Dhamma talks one day? How to make it taking 8 precepts before that? Thank you very much. Okay, I think you have a different idea of AI from me. So the whole idea of AI as being conscious, for me that's ridiculous. But it can, I think, replicate more and more accurately the functions of consciousness. Okay, so we're creating a machine that can reproduce more and more the functions of consciousness, but it can't create consciousness out of nothing. That's a materialist view. I mean, and how would it do that? This is just 2 very different things here. So, can it do Dhamma talk? I'm sure it does already. Why not? Because if you feed 100 or 200 Ajahn Jayasaro Dhamma talks into AI and say, from all that material, give me an Ajahn Jayasaro Dhamma talk on, I'm sure it would, does. We had this a year or so ago where one of the Chinese lay supporters' teenage son had all these questions, and we arranged to meet up with him, and it didn't work out, and so he's very disappointed. So his mother took his questions and put them into ChatGPT and said, these are the questions my son planned to ask Ajahn Jayasaro. If Ajahn Jayasaro had answered them, what would he have said? And it came out, and so she sent it to me and said, what do you think? Yeah, it's good, it was fine, Really, I'm quite impressed. Yeah. So I mean, if you ask questions or you have a Dhamma conversation with ChatGPT, there, if you're very specific about the within a Theravada Buddhist framework or a Thai forest tradition framework, and I've tried it, and it's reasonable. Yeah, good. So, the future for AI and the extent to which it's kind of going to cause disaster for the human race, I don't really know. Seems to be arguments on both sides, but we'll know within the next year or two, and that it reaches the AGI stage where it can perform without human prompts, coming very soon. But it's not conscious. It's not a consciousness. But it can seem, for all purposes, it will appear to be conscious. And this is why already people are falling in love with AI bots, because it can create all of the functions and features of consciousness, but it's not conscious. So how important is that? That's the next question. I mean, for the AI to take 8 precepts, that's meaningless. But if you're asking AI to speak as if it were an upasaka keeping 8 precepts, then it could do that, I would think. Tanajan, I do not have a problem sitting through the meditation at retreats, but I struggle to sustain my rather brief sittings on a day-to-day basis. What do I do? Good friends are important, and these days this is one of the more beneficial aspects of social media. And there are a number of people here who are members of groups that meet together or at a time in the morning and sit together with the screens on, and various modern ways of creating a sense of community and some support from our friends who are struggling in the same way that we are. So that would be one suggestion. There are also monasteries these days that have similar kinds of services where they have live streaming and you can sit and participate in that. Another point is, and something trying to keep repeating again and again, how generating this chanda, this aspiration, this enthusiasm and interest in meditation as a motivating force, and making sure that you're on the right path in meditation. So take that away with you. The other, and one more point perhaps, is that early morning sittings are really the way to go. I think sitting before you go to bed, good, but it's more kind of stress relief and just calming down. And but usually there's not real progress, not for everyone, but for many people, it's not really a time to put real effort into the meditation. It's more of a calming, tends to be more of a calming thing. But first thing in the morning, you're rested, you're awake, and it's quiet, and you can really put some effort into your meditation. But what is especially valuable is that you can track the benefits that you've received from the meditation throughout the day. So this is where this chanda falls away or doesn't fall away. If you're sitting, your main sitting is in the evening, then the following day, it's like a new chapter of your life, a new page has been turned. And it's very difficult to see how what you've been doing last night is influencing your experiences in the following day. But if you sit first thing in the morning and observe, and you begin to see, I feel a little bit more grounded, a little bit more patient, a little kinder, more mindful, more metta, and you say, there's really something happening here. And that's what you need. You need to have this sense of progress. So it's notoriously difficult to measure progress in meditation because there are so many different factors involved and no clear kind of parameters. But generally, if this incremental positive changes correlating with daily meditation practice, that will help you to be more diligent and empower you to keep going. Thank you for your guidance. If I may ask how to decrease this sense of self or I. Sometimes I get this feeling that I am better than others, or when someone gives me advice, I think I am better. After some practice, once I see the thought and contemplate the ego, it will cease, but it will keep on coming back. Well, yes, certainly it will, because that kind of measuring and comparing is so deeply ingrained in the human mind. But every time you reflect on it and you let it go, then you're weakening its hold on you. In the suttas, when the Buddha was asked this question or similar question, he would tend to advocate the investigation of anicca and seeing the change and how this feeling of being superior, it's nothing more than that. Somebody says something or somebody does something and it prompts, it conditions a response. So if that's who you are, that sense of being superior is like who you are, then that means who you are is a function of who they are. You see? Because if they're not inferior, you're not superior. So that sense of superiority is arising because of somebody else's actions. And just seeing the conditioned nature of a sense of I'm better than them, or I'm inferior to them, that one's more tricky than being superior, because you can think it's being humble, but it's a kind of conceit also. And the conceit, which is kind of invisible to most people these days, is he's not better than I'm not better than, we're equal. So that idea of being on the same level, of being equal, that's also can be a form of conceit, because it's based upon this belief in this person, me, who's better than them, or inferior to them, or on the same level as they are. And so you have to keep looking at this as merely a thought, merely as a perception that arises in the mind when the necessary conditions are present. And when those conditions are not present, it doesn't arise. But the essence of consent is measuring. Yes, we measure ourselves against others. But then what are we measuring? And how do we measure? And if we look at our own, so say with a sense of superiority, okay, that's not necessarily a defilement, isn't it? I mean, I think I speak, I'm superior in my use of the English language to Ajahn Jayasaro. His English is very good these days, but it's not quite on my level. I'm superior to him in the use of English language. But that doesn't make me, therefore, a superior person. It's restricted to English language. He knows a lot more about raising chickens than I do. No, he knows a lot more about many things than I am. So he's superior to me in many areas. So when you look at it like this, when you're very specific, I mean, in this area, I'm probably superior, meaning that I have better developed skills. But it's not like a self thing, is it? It's not a matter of being this person who's better or equal or worse. So when we look at that sort of floating sense of superiority, then what's it based on? Oh, I'm smarter than he is. Okay, so to what degree are you the owner of your smartness? Do you create your smartness? Well, no. I mean, you could say certain things. Well, I got it from my dad or from my mum, or they're very smart people, and so it's maybe in my DNA to some degree. I was looked after very well as a child. There was good nutrition, so my brain developed well. I wasn't exposed to traumas or chemicals which retarded the development of my brain. I had a good education, good teachers, read good books, and so you just, where does this come from? Yeah, okay, you've got a smart mind, but it's due to so many different causes and conditions, and you're not responsible for them. Usually, the more closely you look, the more grateful you feel. And that's a genuine humility, not a sort of assumed I'm nothing compared with him. Is you generally see that everything that you value is dependent to some degree on other people and their goodness and kindness and their intelligence. So it's a kind of deconstructing this solid sense of self. You're not trying to get rid of it, but just looking at it, and something that seems really like rock solid. The closer you get to, you see it's like full of holes, and it's very insubstantial, to say the least. So keep looking at that. Dear Ajahn, I am determined to be an anagarika at Wat Banana Chat for 6 months to clear my mind on what I want to do with my life. May I ask what kinds of preparation should I do, e.g. learning the Thai language? So Wat Nana Chat is an international language monastery, and English is the general language which is learned. Learning the Thai language is not compulsory, and you can get by very well without it. But if you're planning to stay longer, then it is very good to learn Thai language. Unless wherever you are, if you don't speak the local language, always there's a little bit of sense of being a guest and being a little separation, and feeling a part of what's going on and being able to contribute to what's going on, then learning local language is very good. But I was to say, on a day-to-day basis, Wat Nana Chat, not necessary. Sitting on the floor, sitting papir, putting on the side saddles, sitting cross-legged, learning chanting. You're meditating already, so keep that up. I would say one practical thing is to practice walking barefoot, like on the road, like we did this morning. That's like good preparation for alms round, and no expectations would be the best preparation. You mentioned Mara last night. What if I cannot tell the difference between Mara and reality? Well, that's why the Buddha is so worthy of praise and worthy of respect, because he could tell the difference. But that's something that we're aspiring to. Like I'm not able to identify what is what. Again, returning to the reason for Dhamma practice and meditation is that you are creating a stable, equanimous, and unbiased awareness, able to face phenomena without instinctual grasping onto it or pushing it away or closing your eyes to it. So being able to be with the nature of things. And so that's how you cultivate the ability to recognize Mara as Mara. But in the meantime, you have some safety protocols, and number one is the 5 precepts. So that's non-negotiable if you want to progress in Dhamma. So if anybody or anything is encouraging you to break one of the 5 precepts, even if you can't see through their disguise, you can just tell, I see you, Mara. Dear Venerable Ajahn, this morning's talk about Arahant, I'm inspired to find out about the Bodhisattva's path for Buddhahood. If time and space is conditional, the length of time to achieve will not matter after all, isn't it? Yes, so continuing that topic I was touched on this morning. So in Theravada Buddhism, at any one time, there is one Buddha. Okay, so now we are in the Buddha Sasana with Gautama Buddha, Sakya, the Sakyan sage, and so any other human being can realize at most arahantship. So there's the Sāvaka Bhumi. So the Buddha Bhumi is not available at the moment. Then someone who takes a vow of bodhisattva, and that is, and there's a tradition in Buddhism is saying you are going to renounce the levels of enlightenment from Sotapanna onwards, because if you become Sotapanna, then you don't have any choice. Within 7 lifetimes at most, you become a arahant. This has been a cause of some debate, and I remember reading a rather obscure Burmese, I think, a sub-commentary in which they posit the idea of a Jula Sotapanna. It's like a little Sotapanna, because otherwise, how do you talk about a bodhisattva training for Buddhahood? But he's not an Arya Pugala, and so how does he differ from an ordinary Putujana? And so they came up with this term, Jula Sotapanna. So he's kind of a little Sotapanna. He's like don't know how to translate that really. So in the many of the Mahayana sects and groups and philosophies, then the idea of Buddha changed, and the idea of an arahant changed, and there's this idea that arahants have not completed their work, and that they can go on to, given this original, if I could say original view that there is a certain distinction between arahant and Buddha, then this new idea was that one can practice and go beyond arahantship to Buddhahood, or that arahantship is not complete. So I'm simplifying and generalizing very much here, but this idea of Buddhahood as being something more immediate, and that there can be innumerable Buddhas at the same time, which differs from Theravada view that there's only one Buddha in every Buddha sasana, and when this Buddhism has disappeared, there will be a period without any Buddhism, and then Maitreya Buddha will appear, and a new Buddhism will appear. So that the Bodhisattva's path in Theravada is to become a future Buddha in some incredibly long period in the future, unimaginably long period in the future. The question here, and I'm not sure I really understand the question, if time and space is conditional, the length of time to achieve will not matter after all. Yeah, I'm not sure I really can answer that. What does it mean to matter? What does it mean to say this matters and this doesn't matter, and how that is affected by the conditioned nature of time and space? Maybe the writer can ask me this, write out the question again in a little bit more detail. So one more question today. This morning's further guidance on watering right effort, building up the toolbox was extremely helpful. I am only armed with basic breath meditation, and it took me a long while to sustain it. Always wonder, does it mean I don't need to learn Anapanasati? Anapanasati is not, a compulsory meditation object, but it is the meditation object which most people can benefit from. It is the meditation object which was preferred by the Buddha himself. Even after his enlightenment, the Buddha would go off on periods of retreat, because there's nothing more to attain. But when he was asked, so what do you do on a retreat? And the Buddha said, I do Anapanasati. So it's like a pleasant abiding for enlightened beings. So Anapanasati is turning to the physical body, so it's Kayanupassana Satipatthana, and it's always available, and you don't need a great leap of faith in Buddhist teachings to observe your breath. And because the breath is on the border, if you like, between of the voluntary and involuntary processes of the body, then it's a very fertile ground for calming and stabilizing attention, but also to understand the three characteristics. So if an example express this is, you can, as an act of will, hold your breath, but you can't hold your breath as long as you want to. After some few seconds or a minute, or depends, if you're a pearl diver in the Pacific, probably 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but generally after a short time, even though you may want to keep holding your breath, you can't. Nature won't let you. So you have a certain control over your breath, but only within the parameters, only within the boundaries that nature gives you. And the whole topic of what you can control and what you can't control in your life is something that can really be understood through reflecting on the breath. It's a very good model for that. The breath, unlike a Dhamma, a word like Buddha or some, it's a meditation object which changes with according to the effort that's put in. So when you're as the mind becomes calmer, then the breath becomes more subtle. And eventually it may lead to a point where there's no perception of the breath at all. So the body is still breathing, but it doesn't feel like it's breathing. And so again, what we're understanding causality, and we're understanding cause and effect and effort and its result by focusing on the breath and seeing how it changes and developing skill to sustain that same clarity and wakefulness as the breath changes, because we can't just establish a certain level of effort and just stick with that, because the object is changing. So the breath is very profound object of meditation, and one which has a central role in Buddhist meditation for the past 2,000 years. But it's not for everyone. You may have like breathing difficulties, for example, or some physical problem that prevents you from being comfortably with the breath. Or it may just not suit you. And that's okay, because there are other alternative means of developing meditation. I referred to the 10 Anusati this morning, or the 40 Kamatan. Yesterday I believe I mentioned that you can, for example, just take the word Buddho. And some of the disciples of Ajahn, this was their thing. They would just keep this word in their mind, like for the whole day. Buddho, 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 throughout every waking moment of their life. Not as a sort of self-hypnosis, but it's the knowing, the knowing, the knowing, the knowing. So that the profound meaning of Buddho, when held correctly, sort of informs the mind. So there are the investigation of the body, of the 32 parts of the body, development of metta, mindfulness of death, so many other meditation practices, that these can be used as supports and ways of refreshing the mind. If you've been doing a lot of anapanasati, it's sometimes nice to have freshen things up by some metta practice or some body contemplation or whatever. But they can also be the primary practice. So if anapanasati is just you have no sense of connection with it, or resonance with it, just doesn't tried it again and again, and it's just then it's quite all right to pursue one of the other meditation objects. Okay, that's enough for this afternoon.
ครับขอโอกาสครับอันดมยังโอวาทกถาสาธุกรังตถามเสสาธุสาธุสาธุอนุโมทา